Nairobi hummed with life, a city of bright colors and constant motion. Matatus, painted brightly, zipped through busy streets. People walked with purpose, their voices a lively chorus. Skyscrapers pierced the clear blue sky, symbols of a modern Africa. But beneath this vibrant surface, another layer existed, a secret pulse, a whisper of ancient magic, often unheard. It was woven into the very fabric of the city, waiting. This magic did not reside in the obvious places, not in the grand government buildings, nor in the bustling Maasai market, though that had its own charms. It preferred the forgotten corners, the quiet, sun-dappled alleyways, the spaces between the new and the old. It clung to ancient trees that had watched the city grow from a small camp into a sprawling metropolis. The city held its secrets carefully, like precious jewels. Imagine an old wall tucked away from the main roads, perhaps behind a cluster of dukas selling everything from spices to mobile phones. This wall was made of dark, weathered stones. Ivy climbed its surface, a lush green tapestry against the grey. The sun rarely kissed its lower stones, leaving them cool to the touch even on the hottest days. This wall felt different. It seemed to listen. It seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Children, with their open hearts and unfiltered senses, sometimes felt it. They would chase each other near such walls, their laughter echoing. They might glimpse a strange light, or catch a whiff of an unidentifiable sweet perfume. They would invent stories, tales of hidden doors and secret worlds. Their parents would smile, pat their heads, and call it childhood fantasy, but was it merely imagination, or were they closer to the truth than anyone knew? Beyond such a wall, or perhaps woven into its very essence, lay the garden. It did not feature on any tourist map of Nairobi. No tour guide knew its name or location. You could not simply decide to visit it. The garden chose. It revealed itself only to a select few. It was an oasis of impossible beauty, a vibrant splash of colour and life, a secret, magical heart beating steadily within the bustling city. From the outside, if one even chanced upon its hidden entrance, it appeared unremarkable. Perhaps a narrow, unassuming archway, or a weathered wooden door, paint peeling, set into a crumbling section of a long-forgotten compound. It might even be just a shimmer in the air, a place where the light bent strangely for a moment. It was designed to be overlooked. Most people hurried past, their minds on daily concerns. They never gave it a second glance. But for those with a spark of curiosity, for those whose souls yearned for something more, it was different. A faint ethereal melody might drift from within, a tune unlike any earthly song. A delicate, intoxicating fragrance might tease their senses, promising unknown delights. A subtle pull, an unspoken invitation, a gentle dare to pause, to look closer, to reach out and touch the ordinary, expecting the extraordinary, to push open the door to wonder. Stepping inside, the world transformed instantly. The clamour of Nairobi's streets dissolved. It was replaced by a profound, peaceful silence, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the sweet, melodious calls of birds unseen in the city parks. The air here was pure, fresh and sweet, alive with an unseen energy. Flowers bloomed in 1,000 impossible colours, their petals like silk and velvet. Ancient trees with wise, gnarled branches whispered secrets to the gentle breeze. This was the hidden bloom, a sanctuary of magic. Amani was a child of Nairobi. She navigated its crowded streets with a quiet grace. She loved the city's infectious energy, its vibrant tapestry of cultures, its resilient spirit. Yet Amani always sensed something more, a hidden layer, a magical undercurrent flowing just beneath the surface of everyday life. She was a dreamer, her thoughts often wandering to worlds unseen. Her eyes searched for wonder in the mundane. She walked through Nairobi not just seeing, but observing. She noticed the intricate dance of light and shadow in narrow alleyways, the determined way a tiny wildflower pushed through a crack in the pavement, the kaleidoscope of colours in a sunset reflecting off a glass building. She carried a sketchbook everywhere. In it she drew the city not just as it was, but as it could be, filled with hidden marvels. She believed in magic, the quiet kind. Amani worked in a small, cosy bookstore tucked away on a less-travelled street. The shop smelled of old paper, fresh ink, and brewing chai. It was her haven, surrounded by stories of daring adventures, faraway lands, and, of course, magic. She felt a sense of belonging. She often found herself lost in the pages, her imagination soaring. Sometimes customers would find her smiling softly, a distant look in her eyes as if she had just returned from another world. Her grandmother, her shosho, would tell her stories, ancient tales passed down through generations, stories of benevolent spirits residing in the Ungong Hills, of mystical creatures that roamed the plains at night, of hidden places within Nairobi itself, gateways to other realms. Amani absorbed these stories like a thirsty plant absorbs rain. They resonated deep within her soul. They felt truer than the headlines in the daily newspaper. She longed to find such a place, a testament to the old magic. Ken also called Nairobi home. He had known Amani since they were children, playing together in the city's parks, but their paths of thought had diverged as they grew. Ken was pragmatic. His feet were planted firmly on the ground. He believed in what he could see, touch, and measure. Logic was his compass. The world for Ken operated on understandable principles. Science and reason were his guides. He was pursuing a degree in civil engineering at the university. He loved the precision of mathematics, the challenge of designing structures that were both strong and elegant, buildings that would shape Nairobi's future skyline. Magic to him was the stuff of fiction, entertaining perhaps in movies or books, but with no place in the tangible reality of the 21st century. He often found Amani's belief in the unseen rather charming, but ultimately quite fanciful. "Show me the proof, Amani," he would often say, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "One piece of solid evidence. Then maybe I'll consider your magical theories." He never intended to be dismissive. He simply processed the world through a different lens, a lens that filtered out the improbable, the unexplainable. For him, there were facts and there was fiction. There was little room for overlap between the two in his ordered world. Despite his inherent skepticism, Ken valued Amani's friendship immensely. He admired her boundless imagination, her artistic talent, her unwavering kindness. He often found himself drawn into her world, listening to her elaborate theories about hidden wonders. Even if he couldn't bring himself to believe them, he enjoyed the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of them. Their bond was a curious mix, the dreamer and the realist, an unlikely pair, navigating the complexities of life in their beloved city. Section 5. The Unseen Path. One late afternoon, the air in Nairobi felt unusually charged. A strange stillness had fallen over the normally boisterous city. The usual symphony of matatu horns and street vendor calls seemed distant, muffled. Amani felt it keenly, a prickling on her skin, a quiet hum in the depths of her soul, a sense of anticipation, a pull towards something unknown, stronger than she had ever experienced before. It was a silent summons. She was walking home from the bookstore, her mind replaying a particularly vivid passage from a fantasy novel. It was her usual route, one she had taken countless times. But today something was different. Her gaze was drawn to an alleyway she typically overlooked. It was narrow, shrouded in shadows, but today it seemed to beckon. A faint, indescribably sweet fragrance wafted from its depths, the scent of flowers she had only ever drawn in her sketchbook. Flowers from her dreams. Ken was meant to meet Amani near her bookstore. His engineering lecture had run late, and he was hurrying, slightly annoyed. He pulled out his phone to text her, but there was no signal. That was odd. He looked up, scanning the street. He spotted Amani. She was standing at the entrance of a dark, narrow alley. Her posture was transfixed, her head tilted as if listening to something he couldn't hear. He called out her name. She gave no sign of hearing him. Amani took a hesitant step into the alley, then another. She was drawn forward by an invisible thread, a silent promise of discovery, towards the enchanting scent, towards the heart of the mystery. Ken felt a sudden jolt of unease. He quickened his pace, a frown creasing his brow. He didn't believe in hocus pocus, but the way Amani moved, the peculiar stillness of the air, the unnerving silence of that alley, it all combined to make him pause. Then, compelled by a feeling he couldn't name, he followed her. Their ordinary lives were on the verge of becoming extraordinary. Section 1. The Shimmering Veil. Amani reached the end of the narrow, shadowed alley. Directly in front of her, the air itself seemed to ripple. It shimmered with faint, pearlescent colours. She hesitated for only a moment. Her fingers touched the shimmering surface. She pushed forward, a small gasp escaping her lips as she stepped through. The muffled sounds of Nairobi disappeared completely. Ken, meanwhile, had rushed down the alley, his concern growing. The shimmering veil was still there, pulsing softly. It looked utterly unreal. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, Ken propelled himself through the shimmering veil into the unknown. Section 2. A Symphony of Senses. The moment Amani fully entered, she felt it. An overwhelming wave of peace. The air was alive. It thrummed with a gentle energy that vibrated deep within her bones. It smelled of damp earth, of 1,000 unknown blossoms, of pure sweet rain. It was the scent of her dreams, amplified, made real. Towering trees with silver bark and leaves of sapphire and gold reached towards a sky that was a clearer, softer blue than any she had seen. Flowers, in colours she had no names for, glowed with a soft internal light. Their petals were like velvet, like spun moonlight. She spun around slowly, her arms outstretched, a joyous laugh bubbling up from her chest. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of profound recognition. This was the place she had always known existed, the sanctuary her Shosho stories had hinted at, the magic she had always believed in, hidden just out of sight. Every line in her sketchbook, every whispered hope, every flight of fancy, it was all validated here. In this impossible, breathtaking garden, she felt like she had finally, truly come home. This was her truth. Ken stumbled through the veil, blinking against the sudden, vibrant light. He almost tripped on an exposed root, catching himself at the last second. His first coherent thought was one of utter disbelief. His scientific mind scrambled, trying to categorize, to explain. Was it a hidden greenhouse, an elaborate secret botanical project? But the scale, the impossible flora, the very quality of the light, nothing made sense. The plants around him pulsed with gentle colors. Strange, melodious bird calls, unlike any he'd ever heard, echoed through the air. He felt a headache beginning to form. He saw Amani, a few paces ahead, twirling with an expression of pure ecstasy. She looked as if she belonged here, as if she were a part of this fantastical landscape. He wanted to call out, to demand an explanation, but the words caught in his throat. What explanation could there possibly be for this? He ran a hand through his hair, his usual composure completely shattered. He felt small, insignificant, lost in a place that his logical mind insisted could not, should not exist. His world had just been turned upside down. Section 3. The Skeptic Stumble. Amani took a few steps into the garden, drawn by a path of glowing stones. The garden seemed to guide her. She touched a glowing flower. It hummed softly under her fingers. She smiled, feeling a connection. Ken watched, amazed. He saw the flower react to her touch. He tried to mimic her, but nothing happened. A small creature landed near Amani. It chirped like tiny glass bells. Amani cooed, holding out her hand. The creature nuzzled her finger. Ken stared, baffled by the magic. Section 4. Echoes of an Unseen Heart. As Amani took another step along the glowing path, she thought about how thirsty she was. She glanced towards a cluster of lush, unfamiliar fruit hanging from a low branch. One fruit detached and floated gently towards her outstretched hand. She caught it, her eyes wide with wonder. Ken witnessed the entire event, his jaw dropping open. Amani looked at the fruit, then back at Ken, a slow smile spreading across her face. She took a small, tentative bite. The taste was exquisite. Section 5. The First Whisper of Purpose. They walked on, deeper into the garden's embrace. The path of glowing stones led them to a small, circular clearing. In the centre stood a single, ancient-looking pedestal. It was carved from the same dark stone as the whispering walls of Nairobi, but here it was smooth, almost polished by time. Upon the pedestal rested not a statue nor an artifact, but a single, perfect, unopened flower bud. It was larger than any bud they had seen so far, its petals tightly furled, glowing with a soft internal white light. Amani felt an irresistible pull towards it. This felt different from the playful magic of the floating fruit or the curious creatures. This felt important. Significant. Ken, too, sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The playful curiosity of the garden seemed to recede slightly, replaced by a quiet solemnity in this clearing. He found himself holding his breath, watching Amani as she approached the pedestal. He was still trying to process everything, but a new feeling was emerging alongside his bewilderment, a reluctant curiosity. What was this place truly about? Amani reached out a hesitant hand towards the glowing bud. As her fingers brushed its smooth, cool surface, the bud pulsed with light. Once, twice. Then intricate patterns like silver veins began to glow across its surface, tracing delicate, unknown symbols. They shimmered for a moment, then faded, only to be replaced by another set, and then another. As if cycling through a silent message, Amani felt a faint whisper in her mind. Not words, but emotions. A sense of longing, a plea, a glimmer of hope. Ken saw the light patterns. He even thought he saw a flicker of recognition, or perhaps understanding, in Amani's eyes. He looked from the bud to Amani, then back to the bud. "What is it doing?" he asked, his voice hushed. Amani shook her head slowly. "I'm not sure," she replied, her gaze fixed on the pulsing flower, "but I think it needs something. I think it's asking for help." They stood there, the dreamer and the skeptic, united by an impossible reality. The garden had shared its first secret, and perhaps its first challenge. The initial wonder in the clearing began to fade. A new sensation crept in. It was subtle at first, a slight dimming of the ambient light. Amani noticed it almost immediately. The vibrant colors of the surrounding flora seemed less intense. The joyful chirping of the unseen birds faltered, becoming less frequent, more subdued. The very air, once thrumming with an almost palpable energy, now felt a little thinner, a little weaker. A chill, not of temperature but of spirit, seemed to touch the edges of the magical haven they had discovered. The large unopened flower bud on the pedestal pulsed again. This time its light was not strong and steady. It flickered, like a candle struggling against a sudden draught. The silver, intricate patterns that had danced across its surface now appeared fainter, less defined. Amani felt a pang of worry, a tightening in her chest. It was as if the bud, the heart of this clearing, was in distress. She instinctively reached out again, her fingers lightly touching its surface. It felt cooler than before, and a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through it. The connection she felt was now tinged with sadness. Ken, still grappling with the impossible reality of the garden, also sensed the change. He might not have Amani's intuitive connection, but he was observant. He noticed the shift in light quality. He saw the growing concern on Amani's face. He'd been trying to find a logical explanation for everything, perhaps a natural cycle within this bizarre ecosystem. But the speed of this change, the almost emotional quality of the bud's flickering light, it defied any simple, rational explanation. He felt a prickle of unease that had nothing to do with his previous skepticism. This felt like something was genuinely wrong. "What's happening to it?" Ken asked, his voice hushed, the earlier bewilderment now mixed with genuine concern. He looked at Amani, seeking an answer she might not have. Amani shook her head slowly, her eyes fixed on the struggling bud. "I don't know," she whispered, "but it feels weaker, like its energy is draining away. The beautiful, vibrant garden, which moments ago had been a source of pure joy and wonder, now seemed vulnerable, fragile." The initial magic of discovery was quickly being overshadowed by a growing sense of foreboding, a silent alarm ringing through this hidden paradise. As Amani touched the fading bud, its light flared, a desperate, brief illumination. An image flooded Amani's mind, a vivid, overwhelming vision, the garden vibrant and overflowing with life, creatures of light dancing among flowers, energy flowing like rivers through the earth. A vision of perfect harmony and pure magic. Then darkness crept in. Like an oily stain spreading, light creatures scattered, dimming. Rivers of energy faltered. The garden's colours muted, the bud's glow diminished, a wave of fear and sorrow, an overwhelming experience. The images faded. Amani gasped, pulling her hand back. She swayed, eyes wide with shock. Ken reached out to steady her. "Amani, what happened? What did you see?" He had seen the bud's light flare. He knew something significant had occurred. Amani took deep breaths. I saw it," she stammered. "I saw the garden, how it's supposed to be, and then darkness hurting it. It's draining its life." She looked at Ken, pleading for understanding. The experience was utterly real to her. The problem was now a terrifying reality. The garden was truly in danger. Amani struggled to articulate the vision. It was dense, emotionally charged. The darkness felt external, seeping in, like a creeping blight, a force of decay. Ken listened, concerned. Could the city be harming this sanctuary? The garden's distress was real. Amani sensed it was connected to the city. The implications were staggering. The garden poisoned by the city. The flower bud on the pedestal gave another weak flicker. Instead of a vision, Amani felt a desperate pulse of emotion directed at her and Ken. It was a profound hope, mixed with an urgent appeal. "Help us." The garden was actively asking for their intervention. Amani looked at Ken, her eyes wide. "It's asking for our help," she whispered. "It knows we're here. It chose us." The responsibility felt enormous. Ken felt the shift too. The air seemed to plead. He looked at the dying bud and the muted colours of the flowers. His logical mind struggled, but the emotional weight was undeniable. He saw the conviction in Amani's eyes. The garden seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their response. The unspoken plea hung heavy between them. It was a call to step beyond their ordinary lives. The magical world had revealed its vulnerability, and it was looking to two ordinary young people to be its protectors. The choice was theirs to make. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. Amani felt a surge of protectiveness. This garden had shown her a truth she had always sensed. Now it was suffering. Fear was there, but resolve was rising. She had to try. She looked at Ken, who was still processing. "Ken," she began softly, "I know this is a lot, but I believe this garden needs us. I can't just walk away from this." Her voice didn't waver. Ken looked from Amani to the fading bud. His pragmatic mind screamed at him. They were students, not heroes. Yet he had seen the floating fruit, the reactive flowers, Amani's vision. He saw the determination in Amani's eyes. He trusted her. "Okay, Amani," he said quietly. "I don't understand half of this, but I'm with you." A small, grateful smile touched Amani's lips. They were no longer just visitors. They had accepted the garden's plea. The dreamer and the skeptic had become its reluctant guardians. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. The choice was theirs to make. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. The choice was theirs to make. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. The moment Ken agreed, the dying flower bud pulsed one last time. A single shimmering petal detached and hovered between Amani and Ken. The petal glowed with a soft silvery light. Amani reached out, her fingers closing around the delicate petal. As she held it, a new image formed in her mind. It was a path of faint silvery light. This trail seemed to lead deeper into the garden. Ken watched, struggling to categorize the event. "What is it, Amani?" he asked. "It's showing us a way," she said. "I think we need to follow it." The garden had given them a direction. Their journey as guardians was beginning. The first step into the unknown was beckoning. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. They left the clearing, Amani leading the way. The silvery petal pulsed faintly, guiding them. Ken walked beside her, scanning their surroundings. The path led them towards ancient trees. The air grew cooler and a profound silence enveloped them. Amani felt a prickling sensation, as if they were being observed. Suddenly a massive root blocked their way. Two figures emerged from the shadows. They were tree spirits, ancient and solemn. The tree spirits regarded them with glowing amber eyes. Amani held up the glowing petal. "We were called," she said. "The heart of the garden asked for our help." One of the tree spirits tilted its head. The massive root receded back into the earth. "Prove your intentions with your actions," a thought came from the spirit. The path was clear. The trail of light led them deeper into the ancient trees. The path grew less distinct. Twisted roots and low-hanging vines created obstacles. The silvery light flickered, testing their resolve. Ken found this section particularly challenging. "Are you sure this is the way, Amani?" he asked. "I have to trust it, Ken," she replied. The garden asked for their help. Suddenly Amani stumbled, dropping the glowing petal. It skittered away into the undergrowth. Panic seized her. "The petal, I've lost it!" Ken knelt, searching frantically. Without the petal's guidance, they were lost. Despair threatened to overwhelm them. Ken noticed a faint pulsing light deeper within the thicket. "Amani, look," he whispered. They found a narrow opening, light emanating from within. They squeezed through and found themselves in a small cave. The walls were lined with enormous crystals emitting a sorrowful blue light. The lost petal lay at the entrance, its light in sync with the crystals. Amani picked up the petal, feeling a wave of grief. The crystals were like the garden's memory cells, weeping. Ken noticed the blue light was darker near cracks. "Amani, these crystals are damaged," he said. He pointed to a fissure with a shadowy wisp seeping out. Amani approached the fissure, feeling the coldness and negativity. "This is one of the places where the darkness gets in," she whispered. The garden was bleeding its magic here. Understanding the problem was one thing. Seeing its tangible effects was far more chilling. The garden's heartbeat slowed, waiting. The choice was theirs to make. The silvery petal urged Amani onward, its light pointing towards a narrow passage at the far end of the crystal cave. As they exited, the air grew damp, and they could hear the gentle sound of running water. The passage opened into another grotto. dominated by a small, once beautiful waterfall. But the water was no longer clear. It had a murky, oily sheen, and the rocks it flowed over were stained with dark, unnatural colours. The vibrant mosses and ferns that should have lined its banks were withered and grey. From the centre of the stream, a figure shimmered into existence. It was humanoid, but its form was composed of swirling water, translucent and ethereal. A naiad, a spirit of the stream. Her features were indistinct, her voice a mere whisper carried on the sound of the flowing water, but her distress was clear. The lifeblood, oh, it sickens, she murmured, her watery form flickering unsteadily. The sweet water now carry poison from the waking world, from the city beyond the veil. The naiad extended a trembling, watery hand towards them. The shadow, it feeds on neglect, on forgotten places where bitterness festers. It finds entry where the city's heart turns cold. Her words were fragmented, her energy clearly waning, but the message was urgent. She was trying to tell them something specific about the source of the contamination. Amani felt a deep empathy for the suffering spirit. "Where?" Amani asked gently. "Where in the city is this happening? How can we stop it from poisoning you, from poisoning the garden?" The naiad's form flickered more violently. "Old wounds, beneath new stone, where progress casts long shadows," she whispered, her voice fading. "A place of forgotten sorrow, now a conduit for the blight." Then, with a final, sorrowful sigh, her watery form dissolved back into the tainted stream, leaving only ripples on the murky surface. Amani and Ken stood in silence for a moment, the naiad's cryptic words echoing in the grotto. They now knew the darkness originated from a specific neglected place in Nairobi, a place where old pain and new development clashed. Their next step was becoming clearer. They would have to leave the garden and find this source in their own world. The naiad's final words hung heavy in the damp air of the grotto. Old wounds beneath new stone. Amani and Ken exchanged a look. Their path was clear. They had to return to Nairobi. They had to find this place of forgotten sorrow. The garden had shown them the symptoms of its illness. Now they needed to find the source of the poison in their own world. The task felt immense, almost impossible. How could two ordinary people heal such a deep, metaphysical wound within a sprawling city? Yet the garden's silent plea, the memory of the dying bud, spurred them on. The silvery petal in Amani's hand pulsed again. This time the light it cast was not a trail. It was a focused beam, pointing back towards the crystal cave. It guided them through the narrow passage, back past the weeping crystals. The crystals seemed to hum a little louder as they passed, a mournful acknowledgement of their mission. They retraced their steps through the tangled domain of the ancient trees. The tree spirits watched them pass, their amber eyes still solemn, but perhaps with a flicker less suspicion, a hint more hope. The path felt less resistant now. They reached the Shimmering Veil, the portal between worlds. It looked different from this side, more fragile. Its pearlescent colours seemed to swirl with a nervous energy. As they approached, the air around it crackled faintly. The sweet scent of the garden felt more precious, more vulnerable than ever before. Amani paused, looking back at the impossible beauty, now tinged with sadness and fear. Leaving felt like abandoning a patient in critical condition. But she knew they had to go. The cure lay beyond this magical threshold, in the familiar streets of their home. Ken placed a reassuring hand on Amani's shoulder. "We'll come back," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. His own transformation from skeptic to reluctant warrior was almost complete. The garden's plight had touched something deep within him. He understood the stakes. He understood that this was no longer just Amani's magical quest. It was their shared responsibility. With a final, lingering look at the endangered paradise, they stepped forward. The portal enveloped them, not with the gentle welcome of before, but with a sense of urgent, desperate plea. The push was stronger, the transition more jarring. They stumbled out of the narrow alleyway, back into the familiar cacophony of Nairobi. The sudden assault of sounds, matatu horns, chatter, distant music was jarring after the garden's ethereal quiet. The air, thick with city smells, felt heavy and mundane. For a moment the vibrant, magical garden seemed like a dream, but the silvery petal, still glowing faintly in Amani's hand, was a tangible reminder. The urgency of their mission pulsed with it. The contrast was stark. The city, so alive and bustling, seemed oblivious to the magical heart it was slowly, unknowingly crushing. They found a quiet spot on a bench in a small, dusty park. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows. Old wounds. Beneath new stone, Amani repeated the Naiad's words, where progress casts long shadows, a place of forgotten sorrow. They needed to think. What place in Nairobi fit that description? The city was constantly reinventing itself. New buildings rose where old ones had stood. Progress was everywhere. But progress often came at a cost, sometimes leaving forgotten histories and unresolved pains in its wake. They needed to find a specific place. Ken, the engineering student, thought of the city's development. Beneath new stone, he mused. That could mean foundations of new buildings or areas that have been recently redeveloped, perhaps covering something older. He pulled out his phone. This time it had signal. He started searching online for historical sites in Nairobi, looking for places that had undergone significant recent changes or were known for some past tragedy. The Naiad's words were cryptic, a riddle wrapped in sorrow, and the answer was buried somewhere in the city's complex layers. Amani closed her eyes, trying to reconnect with the garden's feeling. The Naiad's sorrow, forgotten sorrow, she whispered. It felt like a place people don't visit, a place that holds pain that hasn't been healed. She thought of old cemeteries, perhaps relocated or built over, or sites of past conflicts or disasters now smoothed over by modern development, their stories erased from common memory. The task felt like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. But the garden was counting on them. They had to narrow it down. The shadow was growing. Ken's search brought up several possibilities: old colonial-era sites, some now repurposed, others neglected, areas where informal settlements had been cleared for new infrastructure. Each held a potential for forgotten sorrow. Amani listened, trying to feel a resonance with the Naiad's message. One particular entry caught her attention: an old, largely disused municipal cemetery, portions of which had been encroached upon by recent urban expansion. It was located in a part of the city that had seen rapid, sometimes chaotic, development. Uhuru Gardens Memorial Park, Ken read, but sections near the periphery. There were some controversies about land demarcation a few years back. That feels, possible, Amani said slowly, a place of rest, disturbed, old sorrow, new stone. The name Uhuru Gardens usually evoked pride and celebration, but the mention of controversies, of encroachment, hinted at a potential source of neglect and festering negativity. The silvery petal in her hand seemed to pulse a little stronger, its light warming slightly. It was a faint confirmation, but enough to give them a direction. They had a lead, their first real step in confronting the source of the garden's blight. They took a matatu, the brightly coloured bus weaving through Nairobi's relentless traffic. The journey itself felt different now. Every construction site they passed, every new high-rise gleaming in the sun, made them wonder about the shadows of progress. The city they loved suddenly seemed to hold a hidden darkness, a network of unseen wounds. The mundane had become menacing. They were seeing their home through new eyes, aware of the delicate balance between the seen and unseen, the modern and the ancient, the magical and the mundane. It was a heavy burden of awareness. They arrived at the edge of the old cemetery. It was quieter here, an oasis of green amidst the urban sprawl, but the atmosphere was heavy. Overgrown grass, weathered tombstones leaning at odd angles. and just beyond a crumbling perimeter wall, the stark concrete and steel of new apartment blocks loomed, casting literal long shadows over the older graves. The air felt colder, stagnant. Amani shivered despite the warm afternoon. The Naiad's words echoed in her mind. Where progress casts long shadows, this place felt undeniably right, or rather undeniably wrong. Guided by the petal's light, Amani and Ken moved deeper into the cemetery. Piles of construction debris lay near broken headstones. The ground felt strangely barren. The sense of sorrow was palpable. It was the collective pain of the forgotten. This was the wound the Naiad had spoken of. Suddenly the petal blazed with light. It illuminated a recently disturbed patch of earth. The raw earth looked like an open sore. A dark, oily miasma was seeping out. It was pure, concentrated negativity, a visible manifestation of festering sorrow. Ken gasped, stepping back. The sight was chilling. It felt cold and hostile. This was the source, the heart of the shadow. It was more tangible and menacing than imagined. Their biggest challenge was not physical, it was a swirling vortex of pure despair. How could they fight this? Amani stood firm. She felt the garden's magic in the petal, a tiny spark of light against darkness. They couldn't use force. It was a wound to be cleansed. The negative energy was terrifying. It whispered of hopelessness. The climax of their journey was a battle for hearts and souls. The dark miasma roiled, sensing their presence. Tendrils of shadow reached out, testing, probing. A wave of despair washed over Amani and Ken. Ken gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to run. Amani clutched the glowing petal, her eyes fierce. "We see you," Amani said, projecting her thoughts towards the darkness. The shadow paused, its tendrils hesitating. They stood at sorrow's gate, armed with a fragile petal and hope. Amani held the glowing petal forward. It felt like a tiny star in her hand. Its light pulsed with her heartbeat. Ken stood beside her, his fear now resolve. He followed Amani's lead. He projected not anger but shared sorrow. The dark miasma hesitated. "They didn't mean to forget," she whispered. The light from the petal intensified. A single bird dared to chirp, a tiny sound in the silence. The petal in Amani's hand grew warmer, almost hot. Its silver light began to spread outwards, gently permeating the shadow. The dark miasma recoiled, startled by the warmth. Amani sensed this was the critical moment. They needed to anchor this light to the wounded earth. She remembered her Shosho's teachings about healing. Sometimes a wound needed more than just acknowledgement. She looked at Ken, a silent question in her eyes. He understood. He nodded, his gaze steady. Together they stepped forward to the raw, disturbed earth. The shadow swirled around the spot, a protective barrier. But the light from the petal was like a gentle key. Amani knelt. She placed the glowing petal onto the scarred soil. The silver light flared brilliantly, then softened, sinking into the ground. A soft sigh rippled through the air. The dark miasma began to thin. Its dissonant hum faded into silence. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. The chilling cold receded. It was a gentle transformation. The shadow dissolved, releasing ancient memories of peaceful times. Images of people tending graves, of children playing under the old tree, of quiet moments of reflection. The forgotten sorrows were being acknowledged and released. The wound was being cleansed. Ken watched, mesmerized. The raw earth began to change. Tiny green shoots pushed through the soil. Plants shimmered with a faint silvery light. The air filled with a subtle, sweet fragrance. Despair was replaced by a profound calm. The forgotten wound was breathing again. It was beginning to heal from the inside out. The city's unseen scar was closing. With the shadow in the cemetery dispersed, Amani and Ken returned to the garden. The portal's pull felt like a gentle, relieved summons. The air around the entrance felt lighter, sweeter. Stepping through was like being embraced by a joyful wave. The garden greeted them with renewed vibrancy. Colours were brighter, the light softer and more golden. The air thrummed with joyous life. Their hearts lifted with every step. The ancient trees stood tall, leaves shimmering with emerald and sapphire light. Amani felt the tree spirit's gratitude, a peaceful presence. The roots formed graceful arches. Bioluminescent fungi glowed with vibrant light. Doubt was gone, replaced by profound connection. The crystal cave was breathtaking. The mournful blue light was gone. Crystals pulsed with vibrant colors. The energy was uplifting, like a rainbow. Fissures were sealed, crystals radiant. The Naiad's grotto was transformed. The stream ran crystal clear. The Naiad appeared, a graceful figure of luminous water. She bowed, a gesture of profound thanks. They reached the clearing where the dying bud had rested. Their breath caught in their throats. The pedestal was still there, but the bud was gone. In its place stood a magnificent flower. Its petals, like spun moonlight, revealed a heart of dazzling white light. It radiated immense, gentle power. The garden's true heart, now fully restored. Amani felt tears of joy stream down her face. Ken, the former skeptic, simply stared in profound wonder. Days turned into weeks. Life in Nairobi returned to its familiar rhythm for Amani and Ken, yet everything felt different. The world seemed brighter, richer, more layered. Amani's connection to the unseen was now a proven reality. Her dreams were more vivid, her intuition sharper. She carried the memory of the garden's light within her. Ken's transformation was profound. He saw science and engineering as part of a larger mysterious tapestry. Their friendship deepened into an unbreakable bond. They had faced impossible odds together. They often met not just as friends, but as fellow guardians. They understood their adventure was the beginning of an ongoing responsibility. They were protectors, listeners, and silent keepers of a profound secret forged in the heart of a magical garden. The healing of the old cemetery had subtle yet noticeable effects on Nairobi. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. Residents felt a new sense of peace. Construction proceeded with newfound respect. A community initiative cleaned up the cemetery. Acts of remembrance replaced forgotten sorrows. Amani and Ken noticed these changes. The garden reflected the city's soul. It was a continuous unfolding harmony. The city was becoming attuned to its deeper rhythms. The whispers of magic seemed louder now. One evening, a child came into the bookstore. She handed Amani a drawing. It was a picture of a glowing flower. "I dreamed it," the child said. Amani smiled. The garden was still whispering its secrets. The magic was alive in Nairobi's children. Their adventure had concluded. It was a new beginning. The silvery petal pulsed with gentle light. There were other ancient places in Nairobi. The garden was safe for now, but the city was vast and magic had many forms. Their journey as guardians had just begun.